Good. Good.
I really don't know if I can preach because this is like he catches my. I thought it was gonna be funny, and then I got there. I was like, that's all I can look at. So thank you so much for coming. Those of you who are visiting with us, thank you so much for coming. I want you to feel welcome here. So I've got good news tonight. I'm not going to scream at you or anything like that, I promise. But anybody here ever really actually studied the history of Halloween? Anybody ever did that? You know where Halloween came from? So before we get started, just a couple moments tonight, and then we'll let you be dismissed. And what we'll do is we'll be having some chicken stew. We'll be doing it in the fellowship hall. So you go over there and get you some chicken stew. The kids will be downstairs, so if you have any small kids, let them go downstairs and enjoy that. And then during the chicken stew and stuff, we'll allow the kids to go by the trunks and stuff like that, and get some candy and stuff like that. Some of you adults too, you know how it is. Be honest. Be honest. You love Halloween too. Be honest. And so we'll let you do that, and we just want to thank you most of all for coming and being with us. The second thing that I want to let you know before we get started, I don't want any of you to catch it off the wrong way. I don't want you to get a bad drift from it. But what I'm going to talk about tonight, in no way, shape, or form am I meaning that towards you. I'm not meaning that you do it or you participate in it. I'm just going to show you the history of Halloween and where Halloween came from. And maybe when you leave here, you're like, well, my kids are never going to dress up again. But I want to show you where Halloween comes from, why we celebrate Halloween, where do we get Halloween from, that we dress up in all these different costumes, and we go out and get candy and stuff like that. So we want to do that. I've got a passage of scripture to read in Deuteronomy chapter number 18. It's kind of a rough passage of scripture, just to give you a heads up on that. So Deuteronomy chapter number 18, there's just 4 verses here, or 5 verses here, and this is what it says, verses 10 to 14. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. Goes just a little rough. Or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God, for these nations which thou shalt possess hearken unto the observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do. So God gives them He gives them a warning. He's saying, this is what you need to expect going into this land, meeting a bunch of these strange people. Going into this land full of diversity, be aware of these people and drive them out. Don't have any part in them. And a lot of times, if we would go through and talk about each one of these people, and I'm going to mention some of them, a lot of us would sit back in our common sense and be like, you're crazy. Yeah, you're absolutely crazy. I mean, who would do this? Who would participate in this? But this is real stuff, what I'm going to tell you tonight, and this is real people did this real stuff. So first of all, we understand that tomorrow's Halloween, and we understand that a lot of people dress up in costumes like goblins and witches, and not everybody, but a lot of people do that, and demons and all that stuff, and they go around the house to house saying trick or treat and all that stuff, and a lot of times churches have trunk or treat on Halloween for like a safe place for children to go and stuff like that. But I want to show you just a couple of things where Halloween came from and what's it about. Okay, so we're going to try to do this. And 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, "Prove all things, hold fast that which is good." So we want to try to do that. We don't want to try to do anything that is unbiblical. We don't want to try to take a holiday and do that's unbiblical, because then that's when we begin to get in the wrong. That's when we begin to do things that are putting things before God, that's when we begin to go on the shallow water or thin ice, I should say. And so we're going to try not to do that. But I just want to show you what the origins of Halloween is. So this is the origin of Halloween. Okay. Halloween was the custom, and we get it on October 31st because it was the eve to November the 1st. And so that's why it falls on October the 31st, just like Christmas Eve is the day before Christmas. It's the 24th. Christmas is the 25th. So this is how Halloween kind of fell on the 31st. The Druids, it's D-R-U-I-D-S, these group of people. They were really the ones that actually kind of started or pushed this Halloween thing. So this is what they believed in. This origin, this tradition, that this religion that they called, or these Celts or their priests, this is what they did. We know a little about who they are, the Druids, but they elaborate their religious and political organizations. And what they were a group of soothsayers, meaning they were a group of fortune tellers. They were a group of magicians and sorcerers. And so their religion worshipped numerous of gods and natural objects such as trees, whales, magical practices, etc. So that's who they were. That's what they did. And so they started this on October the 31st. They had their beginnings a long time ago. They believed that witches and demons and the dead roamed the earth. That's what they believed. They believed that once you died, you didn't go up, you didn't go down, but you stayed on the earth to roam the earth. And that's where a lot of times that's where we get Halloween, because a lot of times that's where a lot of costumes try to portray something dead, someone dead. And so this is where it came from. These people did that. That's what they did. They thought that the witches and the goblins and all those, they roamed the world. The dead people roamed the world. And so now we can kind of look and say, I don't know about that. And we can kind of question that. If you believe that, and some of you that say, well, that kind of sounds weird. It does sound weird. So on the eve of November the 1st, like I told you, they had these bonfires. And so what we always think about a bonfire is we think about, like, marshmallows and hot dogs and all that stuff. But this is not what their bonfire were. This was literally, they had this bonfire to drive out the evil spirits. That's what their bonfires were. They were like, so let's have this big old bonfire, and let's have this big old fire going so we can drive out all the evil spirits and all the dead people away from where we are right now. Let's do that. And so that's what their goal was to do. That's what their plan was to do with that bonfire. So then after them, the Druids were the Romans. And so this is what they did. The Romans, after Rome conquered Britain, two of the Roman festivals were combined with this Celtic vigil of this Samhain thing that was going on. And what I mean by that was they called these things. The first of these is called a ferrali. So you ever heard of a ferrali? I mean, some people heard of it. It's kind of mixed with a rally, a ferrali. If you ever went over to Britain and stuff, you'd probably hear that more in France and stuff. A ferrali. We're going to have a ferrali. And so that's what the first origin of those. This is what the first one they called it was. Let's have a ferrali. And so in these ferralis it was held in October to honor the dead. So that's what they were doing. They were honoring the dead. So they're having this ferrali in October to honor the dead, and the other honor in this was not only ferrali, but it was Panama. That's the other one that they would have. This Roman goddess of fruit and trees, apples, probably became associated with Halloween because of this goddess that they had. So they would gather together and they would begin to do these ferralis and these panamas to worship these gods and to praise the dead. That's what their goal was to do. Now you see where we're like, wow, Halloween, a bunch of dead people walking around. We can see how they're kind of, you know what I mean? And so that's what they did. But see, nowadays we wouldn't classify it like that. You know what I mean? We just say, oh, it's just a costume. But there's always a meaning behind everything. No matter what you call it, how you want to do it, there's always a meaning behind everything. No matter what the excuses you have, there's always a meaning behind it. We can't justify the truth. We can just bend and shape lies. So that's how a lot of things work with this. And we all know, we've all heard of the holidays that we celebrate the paganism, the pagan gods. You know, the egg on Easter is the god of fertility and all this stuff. But there's a deeper concept to this. Halloween, when I did this study, Halloween was probably off my list just because it's creepy. I ain't dressed up as no dead person. And so the Catholics, much later, the Roman Catholic Church set aside the first day of November to honor all the saints who had no special days of their own. And this was known as All Saints' Day, and was preceded by Hallows Eve. And what that meant was it derived from the word hallowed or holy evening. All the saints are all Hallows Eve is November the 1st, which according to Jewish tradition starts at sundown on the evening before. And this was a festival for the dead. I don't know why they had so many festivals for the dead, but this is what they did. They had this festival for the dead, this Jewish tradition that they started, this celebration that they started for the saints and the martyrs of the Catholic Church by the Pope. And so they would have this for the dead, and it would coincide with the witches and the occult celebrations that they would have for the dead. Now, the witches, modern witches, celebrate 8 main holidays. The most important of these is the Samhain, which is Halloween. These celebrations included this February the 2nd was this Omet, and this Astra Spring, a holiday to March, and then April. All these weird names, I could sit here and list them all, but I don't understand them and I can't hardly pronounce them, so I'm not going to go through that. But there's just a lot of holidays that they would celebrate. Witches would do that. And so they considered the most important, the Halloween, the Samhain, they considered that the most important because the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead is at its thinnest point in the year. That's why they would celebrate. They said it. The world's at its thinnest. Living, what's separating us from the dead is at its thinnest tomorrow. So let's go take our kids out. See how I said some of you sometimes, when we do this, we're like, I ain't locking the doors. But that's how this is what they would do. I'm just trying to give you a little history of Halloween and what it is and how it is. And so that's what they would do is, it was the thinnest part of the year, and so they did it because they say it's so thin that you're making communication easier with the dead. I'm communicating better with the dead because it's the thinnest part of the year. So let's communicate with the dead on October the 31st. Let's do that. Anybody ever heard of like a Ouija board or something?
Yeah.
We're going to get in a room with one of them. Be honest. Be honest.
Yeah.
Okay. I ain't getting in a room with them. That's why I didn't raise my hand. But on October the 31st, these black clothed druids bearing torches would go door to door and select humans for the New Year's sacrifice. So now you see how it's kind of playing parallel to knocking on the door. They would go from door to door to try to find somebody that would be suitable for their sacrifice for the year. So we're going to go sacrifice if you're suitable for it. So they would go from door to door, all blacked out in their cloaks, and sacrifice to the Lord of the dead. In return, the child or infant they would leave. In return for the child or infant, they would leave a hollowed turnip with candlelight shining through the carved faces. Now we see where this is parallel. They would go from door to door, knock on the door, snatch the parents, and leave a carved turnip and a light inside of it so its face would shine. Let's cut open pumpkin. This is creepy. And so this is what they would do with the carved face. This was a satanic counterfeit for the biblical Passover. This is what they were doing. In revealing this, it took place at the night of Halloween, or the Samhain, the night the demons supposedly loosed for the night would pass over the homes marked with those turnips cut out. They would pass over those homes. Those families had provided the required gift or sacrifice over the homes could be hit sometimes with sudden death, the homes that were not marked. So this is why they did it. They did it to say this house is marked. Don't come to this house. Now you see how it's playing parallel to to the Bible. That's how the pagans are. They have to copy something because they don't understand what they're talking about. Anybody know who Anton LaVey is? Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick example of Anton LaVey. Anybody heard of satanic worship? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the founder of that. Anton LaVey, he founded satanic worship. He founded the cult that would sacrifice. He founded the cult that their main objective was to worship the devil. That's what their main objective was. To sell everything, to sell their soul to the devil. This is what he said about Halloween. Let's listen to what he says about Halloween. Now he's deceased, obviously, but he was the head of the worshipers of Satan. He said this, that he was glad that Christian parents let their children worship the devil at least one night out of the year. See, a lot of times we're like, well, how dare you say that I don't let my children, and I wouldn't dare point my finger at you and say you let your children worship the devil one night of the year out of Halloween. But as much as Halloween is parallel and contradicting to the Bible, especially dressing up as things that were mentioned, those things that were mentioned, when I did this study, I was all for it. I ain't gonna lie, I dressed up as scary stuff when I was growing up, all for gags and games and stuff like that. But when I read this, when I did this stuff, it's just one of those things where I was like, I don't think I could ever do it again. The man that founded Satanism said, I'm glad Christian parents let their children worship the devil one night out of the year. That's something that I surely don't want to be a part of. But it passed on from a British Christian. Many people believe Halloween is now a modern celebration, that witches don't exist and the old witchcraft traditions are just not carried out anymore. This is not true. Southeast England, for example, the police still find strange arrangements of animal bones and fire ashes in the woods in some churchyards every November the 1st, or every first November morning. The light from those fires can be seen on October the 31st if you stand at the edge of the forest, and all this stuff. This is all, we don't believe that stuff anymore. We don't believe in that anymore. But this is how it is. This is how the nature of Halloween, the occult of Halloween, this is how it kind of pushes in this hidden supernatural that's inside of Halloween that we don't realize sometimes. Because the origin of Halloween ain't no big deal about it. It's just the history of it. We don't believe in all that. We don't put on dark clothes and go around and knock on people's houses and pick them out and sacrifice them, and then we turn up something, leave them there, and the evil spirits pass over there and don't kill them. We don't believe in that. We don't. We all don't. If you believe in that, you need to go to the courthouse and sue your brain for non-support. I thought I'd get a couple laughs. Some people are still kind of nervous about laughing. Like, who is that guy like Andy standing on? I got two out of it. That's fine. That's fine. So this is the question. This is the real question tonight that I have to ask. Is Halloween just fun and games, or is it more sinister than we really imagine it? Is Halloween fun and games, or is it more supernatural and deep than we imagine? Do we really not know what the meaning of Halloween really is? And it ain't your fault because nobody ever told you it was. And so the Bible is very clear as its positions concerning the so-called celebrations of Halloween. I read it in Deuteronomy chapter number 18. Because the real meaning of Halloween, the real celebration of Halloween is what I just told you. So I'm going to put this as an example, and it's rough, I'm sorry, but I just got to use this for an example. Because a lot of us say that it's not bad because we think it's fun and games. We think it's fun to dress up and to dress like that, and it's fun and it's cute to dress up like that, and it's fun to dress up and look scary and stuff like that. We don't mean anything by it. But let me ask you this. All right, it has a bad connotation, but we don't think it does because we're not doing it for that reason. We're not doing it for that reason. We're not. So what if you dressed up like something that has a bad connotation? what do we think of when we think of something that's just bad, negative? You just throw any word out. No, what do we think? What do we think of when that gives us a bad connotation? We think it gives us do what? Evil. Yeah, the devil. Okay, who likes dressing up like the devil on Halloween? Why don't you? You're not meaning it for anything bad. It's fun. See how I'm saying? See, we don't realize it. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of things that just have bad meanings, and we don't want to be. I don't want to be connected to that. Do you? So this is what it is. The costumes and masks. This is where everything. The Druids, those people that started it, they adored themselves in frightening masks to scare the evil spirits away and to protect them from being snatched into the world of the dead. That's why they wore the masks and the costume. The Roman Catholic Church staged many pageants with their participants dressing up as saints and guardians, and those who did not play a part of a holy one played the parts of the devil. Their dressing in these costumes are considered an alternative history for the trick-or-treaters, what they're doing. So even though we know that this practice has pagan origins to it, yet we still hear professing Christians claim that letting the kids dress up in costumes, playing trick-or-treat, wearing masks, and carrying jack-o'-lanterns doesn't mean anything pagan or cultive to me, so I'll exercise my Christian liberty and partake in all of it. That's all we all say. That's what our defense is. Some parents even think that somehow God excuses all the evil associated with Halloween as long as the kiddies dress up as Bible characters instead of witches and goblins. That's the bending, twisting. Trick-or-treat can come from this. Groups of peasants wearing masks went from house to house led by Lair Bahan, which means white mare, a leader. This is what they would do, wearing a white robe and a horse head. And the horse was a sacred symbol of fertility. And so what they did was they went begging for money for which to buy luxurious for a feast. So they're also demanding that fatted calves and black sheep be prepared for the feast. So that's where they would go around trick-or-treating, following their leader, asking people, begging people for money so that they could purchase things for their festival, and purchasing things so they could talk to the dead, reach the dead. That's what their plans were to do for trick-or-treating. Just trying to tell you where it all comes from, so don't get mad at me. I'm just giving you history here. I'm preaching down your throat or jumping on you or nothing like that. Just trying to give you a history of it. Jack-o'-lanterns and so they we got to be aware of jack-o'-lanterns. So we got to understand something. There's a hidden meaning inside of jack-o'-lantern. So all you're like, what? No, this is what it is. A jack-o'-lantern was originally a turnip. I told you what was a turnip. That was carved out and candle put inside. And the name jack-o'-lantern came from an old Irish legend of a man named Jack who was notorious for drunkenness and for being stingy. One evening at a local pub, he was faced with the devil who came to claim his soul. Jack convinced the devil to have a drink with him, and when the time come to pay, he asked the devil to turn into a gold coin for the price. He could later turn back, and the drinks would cost nothing. So Jack took the coin and placed it in his pocket with a silver cross, which kept the devil from turning back into himself. When the devil promised to leave Jack for another year, Jack released him at the end of the year. As the devil returned, Jack tricked him into climbing the apple tree for an apple. He quickly carved a cross in the tree so the devil could not climb down. Jack finally let the devil down after promising never to return to for Jack's soul. Jack's body finally wore out, and when he went to the gates of heaven, where he was refused entrance because of his stingy and drunken life. Jack then proceeded to hell, where he was again refused entrance. Jack was then forced to walk the earth until judgment, with his only light a burning emblem from hell's fire caught into his turnip. In the United States, the use of a pumpkin replaces the Irish use of turnips and beets. That's why we use the pumpkin. It replaces the turnip. So you see how that is like creepy? And we had no idea about it. We just did it. Why? Because it's just tradition. I had no idea what it meant. No idea what it was about. Anybody know what apple bobbing is?
Yeah.
Apples have long been a token of love and fertility. Early Hebrew women who wanted children washed themselves in water mixed with the sap of an apple tree. Eternal youth was said to come from Norse gods by the eating of apples. From this woman named Encarta. After the Romans conquered Britain, they added a Halloween feature to the Roman harvest festival held in November the 1st in the honor of the Panama, the goddess. So what they would do is, this is what they would do. The bad part about it is this is what they would do. It was a custom prevalent in both the United States and Great Britain, playing games involving fruit such as ducking for apples in a tub of water. But the traces of the Roman harvest festival survived in the customs that we live in today. But the reason why they did the apple bobbing was to have kids. That's why women did it. They wanted to find love. So you're like, my kid ain't never sticking his head in a bucket for apples. All right, we're about to finish up here. This one just hilarious to me, the black cat. Anybody ever heard of the black cat? All the pagan gods they're all superstitious. And if you're superstitious, I just got to ask you one question if you're superstitious. Meaning if you see a black cat cross the road, you ain't going past where a black cat cross the road. That's not superstition. I just have a question for you if you're superstitious. If a rabbit's foot is going to give you luck, I don't know why you don't have sense enough to know that if a rabbit couldn't keep his own foot, it would.
Bless the Lord.
So if a rabbit can't keep his foot, how is it going to give you any luck? That's a question to think about. But anyways, back to this. It's funny, this black cat. The Compton's Encyclopedia says avoidance of black cats having religious origins as well. During the Middle Ages, it was believed that witches could turn themselves into black cats. Thus, when such a cat was seen, it was considered to be a witch in the sky. It's the funniest thing I ever heard. I know a lot of witches. I ain't never seen turn into a black cat. I just thought it was funny that people think a woman is a cat. Anyway, I thought it was funny. So the question is this. Here's the question. Here's the key, and then I'm finished. What is our response to Halloween? Now I just told you the whole entire tradition of it, the origin of it, and how it just cultivates America. What is our response to Halloween? I just want to give you two scriptures, and then I'm done. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. James chapter 4, verse 4. James chapter 4, verse 4. Ye adulterers and adulteress, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity to God? Whosoever therefore be a friend of the world is an enemy of God. What's the proper response to a spirit-filled Christian with Halloween? I just want you to realize tonight, whether you disagree or to agree, I just want you to realize tonight what Halloween promotes. That's what I've just tried to, hopefully I've tried to clear some things up of what Halloween promotes. It promotes fear of death. It promotes wickedness and evil. And so our response to that is to reflect the love of the Lord and the light of the Lord. Let's pray. Father, thank you, God, for the privilege of prayer. God, for your mercy and for your grace. God, for loving us. Father, thank you for all the guests here this evening. Thank you, God, for allowing them to be here. God, I pray you'd help us, Lord, that, Father, we wouldn't be caught up in the moment. God, we wouldn't be caught up in the holiday. Father, God, you would just help us to realize, Lord, that your light should be above that. Your light should be more than that. God, our love for you should be more, and our love for you should abound more, God, than candy, Father, than costume, God, than knocking on the door. Father, our love would just abound.